Hello, my name is Eric Deloach, and I'm a book author, and we have this great show, new show, American Authors and Others, and we have a special guest today. This is going to be a goodie, a great interview, and with no further ado, let's allow him. Let's allow our guest to introduce himself.
Okay, I'm Ron Aprea, jazz musician, and I just authored my first book, and it's called The Era I Almost Missed, and it deals with 6 decades of me in the music business with folks that I worked with during those 6 decades, and I think it's good insight to what goes on in the music world and what happens on the road when you're touring with various bands and some of the other craziness that goes on behind the scenes, as well as some of the stuff that goes on the scenes. So this is my first attempt at writing a book, and the reviews I'm pleasantly surprised. We talk about producing records, and I produced a lot of records, jazz records, over the years. This is kind of the same feeling when you're producing, whether it be a record or you're writing a book. You don't know if anybody but you is going to like it, and when the reviews come back and people respond, and people who've read the book like it, it's just such a big kick for me, because you always have that fear that it's going to be a clunker. Who's going to like this thing? But so far so good, and I'm happy with the responses I've been getting. And thanks for having me on here today with you.
Absolutely, you're probably a legend. Let me just say this off the top here, that and let me just ask you this, and then you'll see what I'm talking about. Tell me what is your young age?
My young age,
as of right now, today.
Okay, I was born in 1939. I'm 81. I'll be 82 the 24th of this month. My birthday is actually coming up.
Okay, so people, I want you to see this. I want you to see this, because I go to church and I hear people, oh, I can't write a book. Oh, I'm too old. Oh I can't. Oh no, I never. But here you have, and I think that once you get a chance to read a book, you're gonna see an icon more than likely. This gentleman is, you said 81?
Yeah.
81. And did you write it this year, or when did you write the book?
I just finished the book a few months ago during the pandemic. I thought it was a good time. I'm still pretty, very much active in the music business. And
wow. You don't have to, but you might already know him. I interviewed a very special guest, Rick Dolorado. You might know him. He's a famous pianist and also a vocalist that's in jazz. So if y'all haven't met, I have to connect that up, because I think that would be a definitely a treat.
Okay.
Yeah. So, but yeah, 81. I just want people to see this. A gentleman that's 81 years old and probably has more energy than I am, a 52-year-old man. Let me just go here. Yeah, because you'll like this. Because I interviewed another guy that's 83. He's interesting. But Jay-Z had a song that's called 40 is the New 20. So I'm assuming 81 is the new 40. Because you look good, you look in shape, and to write a book at this age, the first book, is absolutely amazing. And I have to go ahead and just call you a role model right off the top. There's definitely a role model for everybody out there, that there's really no excuses. If you want to do something and write a book and become a creative person in that space, he's showing you right now that it is possible. So we're very honored to have this esteemed guest today. So we're very happy about that. We want to encourage people to understand that things are possible if they really follow through.
Okay.
So go ahead.
I was going to say, you know, 81 years old, and people, I guess most people my age are retired. I actually had to make room in my schedule to write this book. I've been busy writing, and not only arranging for my own, you know, 16-piece big band, which I still perform with, and
Okay.
was performing regularly until the pandemic. But I actually had to make some room in my schedule to write this. I like being busy. I do about 4 miles a day on a treadmill. I keep myself
Wow.
in shape. I eat right, and I try to, you know, I try to you know, keep the body working the way it's supposed to, and you know, I'm doing what I love doing also, which helps. So yeah, I would encourage everybody to just you know, I mean, retire to what? I mean, why retire? It's, I like I love what I'm doing, so it's not work for me.
Excellent, excellent. Well, let's go here. This is kind of the known ritual here on American Authors and Others. Tell us where you were born and where you grew up at. I mean, and I know the audience wants to know.
Okay, I was born in New York City, Astoria, Queens, um, and well, my school was a public school 126, right, a couple of blocks from my house. And behind my house was a Baptist church, by the way.
Okay.
I was raised listening to gospel music. You know, the choirs on Sunday would sing for hours and hours, and that wonderful gospel music would come right into my kitchen.
Right.
I'd sit by the window and get goosebumps listening to gospel music, and so I was kind of raised on gospel music. That's where it all began for me. So Astoria was a great place to grow up, and I'm really happy. I was blessed to be born in this unique neighborhood, you know, a diversified neighborhood where every, and my friends were to this day, you know. I was doing an interview yesterday. I completely forgot this, but growing up preschool, one of my neighbors was a young lady, a young girl, my age. We were both probably 5 or 6 years old, but her name was Juanita Richardson, and Juanita was a wonderful singer. And I always loved listening to good singers. Something always resonated with me with good vocalists. And Juanita had this great voice. And I used to ask, we'd walk to school together, and I'd ask Juanita to sing Scarlet Ribbons. It was a beautiful tune that she loved to sing, and I loved listening to her sing, and I would get goosebumps. I was always asking to sing this song. So after I wrote the book, my wife and I were sitting here and saying, Juanita Richardson, I wonder what the heck happened to Juanita Richardson. Now we're talking about maybe 70 years ago.
Right.
This was the last time I saw her. So we did a little search on the internet, my wife did, and we found Juanita. She lives in the Bronx.
Wow.
And after all these years, we hooked up again, and it was so great talking to her.
Yeah.
I sent her some pictures, and I sent her a copy of the book that she's in. So we're planning on, as soon as this pandemic eases up a little bit, we're going to get together and have lunch together. And after 70 years, we're going to hook up again, and she's going to sing Scarlet Ribbons for me.
Wow. Wow. And I mean, I'm originally from Georgia, but I lived in New York 16 years. And what I can tell everybody, and I'm sure that you attest to that as well, that that New York is I'm going to have to say probably the world's greatest city. And you know, you can't help but be talented coming out of New York, because you see so much that are, you know, positive things we're talking here, to see so many great things that is understandable, that it's almost like second nature almost to become a book author. You have so much, there's so much to learn, and so many activities and different things that are positive, that it's a great training ground and a great place to be.
I agree. A lot of energy, a lot of life. You know, a lot of things to do. I mean, there's you know, no matter what your interests are, whether it be sports or theater or jazz or, you know, it's got it all. You know, it's got a little bit of everything for everybody. You know,
That's
but,
true. Yeah. So now tell us about, and we do this here as well. What was from your mother or father or grandfather or grandmother? What was a interesting saying that they may have said when you were, you know, young that stuck with you? For example, and they're probably tired of hearing this from me, but my mother would say that it only takes a few individuals to get something done. You don't need an army, just a few good men or a few good women, and you can accomplish a lot. And that stuck with me up until, you know, now. Is there anything that you remember interesting saying that somebody in your family might have said when you were younger and it kind of stuck with you?
uh, you know, off the top of my head, I can't think of any one slogan, but what I can remember, my parents weren't big on teaching me or preaching words of wisdom and stuff like that, but they were very active in making sure that I was exposed to the things that I should be exposed to. They encouraged me to play music. My mother would take me to the Paramount Theater. This was back in the mid '40s. I was probably 5 years old. And in them days, they would have live shows between the movies. You know, they'd have two movies, and between the movies, they would have a live show. And almost always had a big band, jazz bands. And as a kid, I remember sitting in the Paramount Theater listening to these world class musicians playing. Um, the energy and the sound that was coming off that stage would go right through me. So that was my inspiration to want to be a musician. I think that's the inspiration. You don't know. Sometimes I think sometimes you're just born with certain genes that push you into certain things, and that triggers those genes, you know. But my genes were jumping, man, sitting in the theater listening to you know, these great bands. And as I wrote in my book, many years later, I had the thrill of playing the Paramount, same theater where I would sit with my mom, listening to these wonderful bands. I had an opportunity to play at the Paramount Theater with King Curtis's big band. And so I experienced the feeling of sitting on that stage as it's rising. It's like a huge elevator that pulls you up. And so yeah, but that was and of course buying me my first, you know, saxophone, and paying for, prior to that, paying for the rentals of a saxophone. So they always encouraged me to do what I wanted to do, especially for something positive like playing music.
Yeah. Now, so it seems like that your parents, they love music, and at least one of them, and they took you to some of the shows when you were younger. Was that the case?
Yep. Actually, they both love music. I think my mom probably liked music maybe a little bit more than my dad, but they're both musically sensitive. Both sides of my family, my mother's family and my father's family, they're musicians. No jazz musicians. I may have been the first jazz musician, but I had relatives that played instruments and sang. My mother's family, they were all good singers, including my mom. She had a great singing voice. And they would get together. I have a lot of aunts and uncles. She had a lot of brothers and sisters, and they all sang. And we would get together on weekends at my house. We had this huge basement, and it was a finished basement, and they would all come over on weekends. My mom and dad would cook and make piles of food, and everybody, all my cousins and aunts and uncles would come over, and we would sing. And that's what we did. We didn't sit around and argue or talk about politics. We sang, and it was a great environment to grow up in, actually.
What type of music what did they sing sometimes? That's just interesting.
Being of Italian heritage, my mom loved listening to Perry Como, Jimmy Roselli, Jerry Vale, and of course she likes Sinatra and Bing Crosby as well. and Nat King Cole. All the good singers from that era. They, but my mom and dad leaned more toward the Italian singers.
Right, right.
And that was pretty much, there was music in my house going all the time. They didn't understand, probably didn't understand why I had this love affair with jazz, but jazz just resonated with me. And, just it might have started with the gospel music. I don't know. Who knows where it starts? But I remember listening to Pete Fountain, great jazz clarinet player, on TV. And that always, I'd look forward to just listening to him play. But there was always music, and there's no, it was all good music. It wasn't jazz, but they had good taste in music. And as my mom would walk around making the beds and vacuuming, singing all the time. And she would have the record playing, and she'd be singing along with the records as she was cleaning, So I was raised in a music environment,
Yes, like it was you say a family reunion every week, a party celebration of life, a family reunion, very positive, beautiful vibes that you grew up in. It's a very loving environment as well. And now let me ask you, now what about opera?
No, no, that's one area of music I never really got into. I did learn a lot and attend a lot of classical. My son Matthew became a very strong and talented violinist, and he played with the New York Youth Symphony, and he actually did 5 performances at Carnegie Hall, and we were at, of course, every one of those performances, and he actually helped me understand classical music. Through him, I started learning about classical music and appreciating it. So, but opera, not as much. I haven't had exposure to opera.
Okay. So tell us about you said that you went and you were exposed to, you got a chance to watch some shows and you got a chance to get inspired. Who was the first person in jazz that was somebody that you looked up to that really made you go into jazz a little bit more?
Okay, well, I mentioned that Pete Fountain.
Right.
There was a program called the Lawrence Welk Show before your time.
Right.
That would go on once a week. It wasn't my favorite band.
Right.
I appreciated the musicianship. They were all wonderful musicians, and the band was extremely tight, but the music was kind of corny.
Right.
They would always bring out Pete Fountain, and they would have a Dixieland segment with Pete Fountain. So I would sit, as a kid, I would sit there waiting for Pete Fountain to come out. And I loved jazz clarinet. And I thought, geez, I wouldn't mind being a jazz clarinet player. And then from that led me to Benny Goodman, who was also a jazz clarinet player. And Benny Goodman also ran a big band. So that introduced me to the big band swing. Then when I started listening to big bands, the next big band that I fell in love with was the Count Basie Band. Okay. And that led me to Johnny Hodges, who became my idol during that period. Johnny Hodges was a great alto saxophone player with a big, beautiful tone, and he was always featured with the Duke Ellington Band. So I bought all Duke Ellington's records and Basie's records. Those became my 2 favorite bands, and I still love Benny Goodman, but I kind of moved on when I heard Johnny Hodges, and I couldn't get enough of listening to Johnny Hodges, and then it starts a chain reaction kind of thing, and one band leads to another. Next thing I know, I was listening to smaller groups with Charlie Parker. Charlie Parker became my lifelong idol. When I heard Charlie Parker play, I love Johnny Hodges too, but Bird, which was his nickname, Bird was the guy, and I still sit down and study Charlie Parker. He was the man.
Interesting, because I grew up. My dad played in a jazz band, and then I played, in the marching band, and then I played in the jazz band. And we got a chance to watch a film, and one time about jazz, and they were talking about Bird, and they were saying that what he did one time he was in a car and he went by a farm, and he said, stop the car, and he got out and played this, in front, the saxophone in front of a cow to see what the reaction would be. And they said that the cow, I guess the cow was like, I don't know what that is, but I mean, it was interesting to hear that story about him.
Yeah, well, I think it's been a lot of years, unfortunately, Charlie Parker died when he was in his 30s. He was a young guy. But the music, the legacy, and the amount of stuff, recorded stuff that he did in that short period of time is just phenomenal. I mean, and it still holds up today, and it'll hold up 200 years from now. It's timeless music, and it's done on such a high level. It'll be here forever. That Charlie Parker was the man.
I'll take your word for it. Now, tell me, how did it all begin? Because I mean, everybody wants to know. They want to know, how do you become a jazz artist, a jazz great? How does it all begin?
There are no. I wish I can sit down here and give you a formula for it, because there is no set formula. For me,
Right.
I'll tell you how it happened with me. I talked about how I loved Basie's band. Well,
Right.
Birdland is a jazz club in New York City, and in them days, back in the 50s and 60s, they were on Broadway. And as soon as I turned 18, I would hop in my car and drive into the city, and I'd go down to Birdland, especially when Basie's band was in town. So I wanted to hear Basie's band live. And what a thrill that was for me, sitting in front of that great band. And one night, me and two saxophone friends of mine, we were sitting at a table right in front of Basie's band at Birdland. And this photographer girl comes around. In them days, they had photographer girls in all the clubs. They'd come around, take your picture for $5 or whatever, and so this photographer girl comes over to the table. She wants to take our picture. And I said, yeah, that'd be great. I says, if you can get Frank Foster to come over. Frank Foster was a member of the Basie band. Frank was not only a great tenor saxophone player, but he was also one of the great arrangers. He was writing all those great arrangements for the Basie band. I wanted to meet Frank. So I asked the photographer girl if she would bring Frank Foster over, but by the time she even answers, the band's coming out now, getting ready to play. So she just walks away, and I'm thinking she's probably saying, no, I'm not going to do that for you. So we listened to the set, and of course Frank gets up and just plays his butt off, and the place was just packed, and Frank was blowing people away, and holy smokes, what an experience this was. And now the set's over, and we're getting ready to leave, and the photographer comes walking over with Frank Foster. So apparently she didn't forget about what we asked her, and she brings Frank over to our table, and that started a lifelong friendship with Frank Foster and me. He became not only my mentor at that time, but later I played in his band when he left the Basie band.
Wow.
And I copied a lot of his music for him and helped him get his band started. Even helped him with some of the New York, players, and I helped him put his first big band together. Wow. And then our friendship just kept going, and then we went into a friend. I mean, he wound up, coming to my wedding when Angela and I got married, playing at my wedding, and we became lifelong friends. So for me, that was the beginning of my path to get me in. And then Frank, as my chops started getting stronger, and I was playing better, he recommended me to the Woody Herman band. He recommended me to the King Players band. Almost every aspect of my career somehow was connected to Frank Foster. So he was the angel in my life that put me on the path to where I am now. So I hope that answers your question.
Yeah. So tell me about Woody. Is it Woody Herman? Tell me about that experience. I did see the pictures in the book that I saw him a lot. So tell us about him and that experience.
And again, I was recommended by Frank Foster to the Woody Herman band.
Right.
Abe Tertian was Woody's manager, and Abe called me in, says Frank Foster gave me your phone number, and that's how it works. You know, in the music business, you know, you don't get calls from your audience, from people in the audience. You get calls from the people, your peers, um, and most of the gigs, in fact, practically every gig I ever played, came from a recommendation of other musicians. And Frank was always recommending me to different things. If he got a call and he couldn't do it, he'd send me in. And there were several other musicians and you know, peers of mine that would do the same. We would throw each other gigs. You know, if I got a call to play in a certain situation, I couldn't do it, I'd recommend one of my friends, Arnie Lawrence, or even Frank. I got Frank onto a couple of gigs too. So that's how it works. It's a network of musicians, you know, helping each other and recommending people. But so Frank recommended me to Woody Herman's band, and a very interesting thing happened with when I played with Woody's band. Prior to joining his band, I was playing an older Selma saxophone, a beautiful horn, which was gold plated, and it was a model that they called the cigar cutter, and it had a full tone and had great action, and I loved playing that horn. But the older horns and that particular cigar cutter model, you know, it was a challenge to play them in tune. The pitch was not quite as good as some of the newer horns. So I had done a couple of record dates, and I was fighting the pitch a little bit. And I decided I'm going to trade this thing in. I didn't have enough money to buy another horn and keep it. I would have loved to have kept it for certain situations. I would have still loved to play it, but I just didn't have the bread. So I traded it in, and I got myself a new Selma saxophone. And then shortly after that, Frank Foster recommended me to play with Woody's band, and I went out to play with Woody's band. I was actually playing tenor with Woody's band, so my alto sat at home. But one night on the bandstand, prior to playing this concert, I'm looking at Woody's horn, which is standing on the saxophone stand right in front of the sax section, and it's a gold-plated horn. So I walk over to the instrument, and I said, "Gee, I wonder what model this is that Woody's playing." And I picked up the horn, and it was my horn. It was the one I had traded in.
Oh my goodness. Okay.
And so I asked Woody when he got to the gig that night. I asked him, "What's that? What's the story behind you playing that horn?" And he told me that his horn got ripped off in the middle of one of his tours.
Wow.
And he called Links and Longs, which is the store that I traded it in. It was a saxophone dealer in 48th Street in New York City, and they had a reputation for dealing with the best horns. They were professionals, and they didn't mess with student model horns. They were all good horns that they would sell. So Woody just called them, knowing about their reputation. He said, "Send me your best horn," and my cigar cutter had just been traded in, and they shipped it to Woody, and he wound up playing that horn for the rest of his life. And the first thing that I thought,
wow,
was like, he's not having any trouble playing it in tune. But that horn right now is in the Smithsonian Institute. You know.
Wow, that is amazing. Now tell me about the so you when you started. When did you first get a horn, and when did you start it? How did you like practice, and then to becoming okay? Now I want to play with some of the best. I think I'm headed towards being one of the best. I want to play with some of the best. Tell us about that transformation.
All right. Well, I never thought I'd play with the best. I started late.
Right.
My parents didn't have a whole lot of money, and I started renting a saxophone in the seventh grade. It was like $3 a month or something. And they thought, and even that was was a struggle for them to come up with. It seems hard now in this day and age, but in them days, $3 a month was a lot of money, I guess.
Right.
And so they say, well, how about we just stop with this $3 a month thing, and we just put that money aside and buy you a horn. I said, okay, you know. So, but a couple of years went by. So I didn't get started playing the saxophone until I was probably maybe 16, which is late. And most musician students, most of the people at my age were ahead of me musically. So I got into the game a little bit late. And that's basically how I got started. And I would have been happy just to be able to play some songs and entertain myself. I wasn't thinking about, you know, becoming a career musician. That thought was mind-boggling to me. But I started catching up, and I was probably in my late teens and early 20s when I couldn't stop practicing. It just hits you. I wake up in the morning and start practicing, and
Wow.
and I'd practice all day, and I'd be ready to go back to sleep with my horn still in my hands, you know. So I went through a period where I didn't want to put my horn down, and it kind of grew on me. So there was no plan, and I wasn't thinking about becoming a great musician. I was just doing what I loved doing, and I was enjoying the feeling of kind of starting to master an instrument, you know. And it was more about the music than it was about a career. I was thinking about a career. I was just thinking about playing music.
Wow. So what was the last thing you said?
The career just happens, you know. It was pretty much just music, you know. And I wasn't thinking as much about a career, because you always, in the back of your mind, you always think, boy, that would be nice. But I didn't have my plan wasn't to be a career musician. I just wanted to play the hell out of the saxophone. So, and then that leads to good things.
Yeah. So do you remember your first professional gig?
Yeah, I do.
Tell us about it. We're all ears.
Yeah, well, my first professional gig is interesting, and I wrote about this in the book. If anybody's interested, buy my book and you'll get the whole story.
Oh yeah, why not?
Yeah, it was a gig that I did with a small band. It was just alto, tenor, trumpet, 3 horns, piano, bass, and drums, and it was a dance gig.
Mhm.
And it was in Queens. I don't remember exactly where in Queens, but I remember my sister, who was 2 years older than me. She was there with her boyfriend, and it was a dance, and I was I was probably in my early 20s, and I'm thinking, like, man, my first gig with my own band, and what a kick it was seeing people dancing to my music. And as I said, my sister was there. And then in them days, a lot of these dances, and there were many of them in Astoria, they would have a raffle, and they would raffle off a basket of cheer. And a basket of cheer was a bunch of booze, you know, wine and whiskey, you know, in a big basket. And they would have a raffle, and people would buy the raffle tickets for a couple of bucks and hopefully win the basket of cheer. So we're in the middle of the gig, and we do a drum roll, and they pull out the winner for the basket of cheer, and who does it turn out to be? It turns out to be my sister.
Oh, wow, you got great stories.
So the band leader is Ron Aprea, and the winner for the basket of cheer is Elaine Aprea. You know, and it looked kind of fishy. But that's what I remember about my first. But it was a big kick. Actually, glad arrived and break out. But we had a great time.
Yeah, sounds awesome. So how did it come about, the first one?
I don't remember.
Okay.
So, you know, I was always trying to hustle, you know, to get my band to play, because we had been rehearsing. The band was sounding pretty good.
Right.
And I don't really recall. It's one of the few things I don't have any recollection of. It was a long time ago, And
Right.
my sister might have had something to do with getting me that gig. I'm not 100% sure, but I think it might have been that.
But what year was that? About around what year? 40? I mean 50 or what?
Yeah, it was probably in the 50s.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So and now look, the question has to be, okay, you got that under your belt, and then you knew, okay, I
Actually,
can go ahead.
it might have been closer to 1960, actually. But,
Okay, 1960 something.
Yeah.
Okay. So you got that first gig under your belt. What was the feeling? Because you said that you saw people dancing to you performing music. What was that feeling like?
it was euphoric. I mean,
Yeah.
I thought this is kind of cool.
Yeah.
This was almost I was getting close to that image of those bands at the Paramount Theater, you know, that I used to
Okay.
to, you know, and people enjoying the music. And it's a big kick when you're performing and people are really digging what you're doing, you know, and they were. So
Right.
that was that, and what that did, it was it created a thirst for more. You know, you got your career is starting to develop, and you know, you're on that path, and it was a good feeling.
Right. Now, I guess everybody would want to know too. I think did you have a list of songs that you're going to play that night? Did you have like, oh well, we're going to do these 15 songs, or how did that go?
Yeah, well, that's exactly how it goes. You know, you have the arrangements are all numbered, and
Right.
you have everything all numbered, so you know exactly what's up next, and you try to pick. You know, you try to pick a set that's mixed. You don't want to play a couple of ballads in a row. You know, you don't want to play something that's in the same key. So you kind of figure out what works and what the flow is going to be like, and you try to picture what the gig's going to look like before you actually get there.
Definitely. And then I have to ask this. I'm a musician as well. Not on your level, but let me just ask you this. I'm assuming that being a great musician and around such great players, and also and on top of being a great musician, that you were able, I think DJs are as well, for the younger crowd, you're able to see what works and what people respond to. So that really helps you in when you're being a music producer. Are you a composer or whatever? You kind of have a inside track of what people respond to, other than people that might not be musicians.
You know, it really depends on what kind of gig you're doing.
Right.
Uh, if you're playing a dance, for example, well, you got to play dance music. You know?
Right.
Um, and you might even be playing music that you're not crazy about, but music that the situation requires.
Okay.
If I'm doing in these days, I'm doing mostly jazz gigs,
Okay.
and I'm pretty much playing what's been working for me, what I'm comfortable playing, and my wife is a jazz singer, and we work together a lot, and
Wow.
we pretty much have a feel, you know, what material we're doing is going to work.
Right.
And,
Right.
always, of course, you always try to connect with the audience,
Yeah.
and we try to pick the tunes that we think a jazz audience is going to dig.
Right.
So yeah, well, you know, you got to, you know, I toured with Lionel Hampton for a lot of years, and Hampton was the epitome of an audience pleaser. You know, he was a showman. He sang, he played the drums, the vibes. He even told jokes, and and I spoke about this in other interviews, and it might have been to his detriment because he was such a great player. I mean, he was
Right.
a great vibraphonist, and but he wanted to connect with his audiences, and he always did. I loved touring with that band because we always played for packed houses, and he always busted it up. You know, he was such
Right.
a great entertainer. His band was on fire all the time. It was a high energy thing, And I liked that feeling. You know, before we even got to the gig, I knew those people were going to leave happy, you know, and and that was that was you know, his band may not have been the most musical band I've ever played with, although it was on a high musical level.
Right.
But I don't think I ever played with a band. In fact, I know I never played with a band that connected with an audience as well as his band. And so I always loved. I played with his band for 5 years, and I loved every minute of it because it always connected with the audience.
Definitely. Now, how did that come about? I guess you were recommended by a musician.
Yeah.
He's a great player. You definitely need to bring him on as a band member.
Yeah, I was say we get these gigs from our peers, and I made a rehearsal on Long Island with a baritone saxophone player named Pat DeRosa, good baritone player, and he had a really good band.
Right.
And he would call me from time to time to play, to make a rehearsal with his band. It wasn't for a gig; it was just a rehearsal.
Right.
And I made the rehearsal, and in the sax section, there were four saxophone players, and one of the saxophone players, his name was Barry Titone, and Barry asked me during one of the breaks. He asked me if I would like to play with Lionel Hampton's band.
Oh, okay.
Sure. And then the next day, I get a call from. I give him my card, and the next day I get a call from Bill Titone, his brother, who was Lionel Hampton's manager.
Right.
So Bill called me up and asked me if I wanted to play with Hampton. I said, sure. And the following day, I flew out to Lansing, Michigan, and I joined Lionel Hampton's band. But that's how it works in the music business. You know, whether it be a rehearsal or a local gig or you know, one situation usually leads to another.
That's great. I mean, I think the regular audience, I mean, the lay person audience was not aware. You're giving us insight that I hadn't heard before and haven't seen in you know, even in films and documentaries and stuff. So I have to go back here. So when you did, after doing the first gig, so that inspired you, I guess, to do other gigs. And when did you know, okay, well, hey, I'm going to make a career of this. I'm actually I love practicing the saxophone. I love playing in front of the audience. I have several, you know, professional performances under my belt, and people have responded in a positive way. When did you finally make that full leap to where, okay, I've done 20 shows now. This is what I'm going to do. This is who I am.
Well, in my case, it was tough. It was a decision that took me a long time to make. I had a family. I got married kind of young. I had 4 kids.
Right.
And so I had to be careful that there was enough work to feed 6 mouths. You know.
Right.
So I kind of got into the business, you know, a little slower and more cautiously than a lot of other people. If I were 19 or 20 and I just graduated from Berkeley or something, it would have been a lot easier. You know, you have no responsibilities. But like I said, I got in the game a little bit late, and so for me, making the break into a full-time music thing took me a little while longer. So my situation is probably different than 99% of the young folks that are getting into the business these days. And I would recommend that they do it before they buy a house or start raising a family, because it you know, get your career going first. You know, if they're, you know, and today it's tough too. It was a little bit easier back then. The music business has not the music, but the music business has deteriorated so much, and it's so hard for these kids today. I know Phil Woods, may he rest in peace. Phil was a great saxophone player and a friend of mine. Passed away a few years ago, but he used to tell his students, "Don't go into music. become a doctor,
Yeah.
because the business is not like it was. As I said, the name of my book is called The Era I Almost Missed. And the reason for that is the big band era,
Right.
30s, 40s, and even the 50s, I guess, early 50s was the heyday. Those were the great years for the kind of music we're doing. Big band music and swing was the craze. Then rock and roll came in and things started changing, and the big band started phasing out. And then when they were phasing out, that's just when I was getting into the business.
Wow.
I was getting into, I was starting to play on a professional level in the late 50s. And that's the exact period when everything was falling apart for the big band era. So today it's even tougher than it was when I came in. But the people before me, the musicians in the 30s and 40s, boy, they had it going. It was, the jazz and swing music was the pop music of the day, and there was actually a shortage of good musicians. So good players were busy, and then when they came off the road with those bands, they probably recorded. Most of those bands recorded. They made reputations on records. And so when they came off those bands, they got a good studio gig. When there were studio musicians in New York, a couple of different stations. It was a secure gig. These guys were making a lot of money, a lot of record dates and jingles and everything. So the road to getting into the business was to join one of those bands. That was the path to success. That's not happening anymore. So and with this pandemic, who knows what it's going to be like when this thing's over. So I have no idea or any advice to give to anybody trying to start out in the music business these days. It's quite different than when I came into the business, and it's quite different from the generations before me. So advice from me is not, is going to be taken with a grain of salt, I guess.
Wow. Wow. I understand. So tell me about when you met Louis Armstrong. I did read that, but you can tell. I think you can tell them what he said that was very, positive, and that was exciting about you as a player. But tell us about that. I mean that monumental occasion, if you will.
Yeah, the thrill of my life. That happened in 1969, the year that I joined Lionel Hampton's band.
Right.
It was a small band, by the way. I know Hamp was famous for having big bands, but during this period in 1969, probably for financial reasons, it was a small band with just three horns, alto, saxophone, tenor saxophone, trumpet. And then he had a conga player, an organ player, and of course he played vibes and drums and a lot of rhythm, but just the three horns. And we played a gig on Long Island, in fact, Brookhaven Labs, and Louis Armstrong was in the audience.
Wow.
And he's there with his family, kind of just partying, having a good time, dancing and having some fun. And of course, jazz bands always invite other jazz musicians to come up and sit in. And Hamp invited Louis to come up, and he did. And I got a chance to play with and interact with Satchmo himself. And I'm thinking, holy smokes, I must be genius. I mean, I've seen him in movies. And even Lionel Hampton, when I was a kid, I'd see these guys on the big screen, and here I am on the bandstand with them, and one of my first big gigs. So I'm starstruck, and I just loved every minute of that. I just couldn't believe it. And there was a young couple there with a Polaroid camera, no cell phones in them days or digital cameras, and they were taking pictures. And they took a picture of me Louis Armstrong and Lionel Hampton on a Polaroid camera.
Right.
And they gave it to me. And I walked over and showed it to Louis, and he turned it over and he signed it, you know.
Wow.
And I'm thinking, man, my wife just handed me a picture. This is
wow. Wow. That's what happens when you become a jazz musician. I mean, and oh, that was did you get a chance to? I mean, I think you talked a little bit. Tell us a little bit about the conversation.
Yeah, well, it's hard to remember the details of the conversation.
Right.
The words that I'll never forget was coming off the bandstand.
Right.
We shook hands, and I said,
right.
what a kick it was, to play with him. And he says, boy, you sure play that saxophone.
Yeah.
And,
hey.
And that's all it took, man. I levitated, man. I floated home that night.
It was all worth it then, right?
It was what?
It was all worth it then, right?
Oh, sure, man. Those years when that call to play with Lionel Hampton that changed my whole career, And I got to meet and just meeting Hamp, was a thrill for me.
Right.
Again, I'd see him on the big screen too, in movies. And Benny Goodman's Story. I remember I loved that movie, the Benny Goodman Story, and Lionel Hampton was in that movie. And when I joined his band in Lansing, Michigan, I'll never forget this. They gave me all the details. The management company gave me all the details. What hotel I was staying in, this and that. So I get to the hotel. And I said, I think I want to practice a little bit. And I got my clarinet out, and I'm walking around the room, and I'm practicing, and I hear a knock on the door. And I'm thinking, uh-oh, somebody's complaining. A lot of times in hotels, you're practicing in the room, people are sleeping, and they get annoyed. They call the management, and the management comes up and tells you to stop practicing. So I'm expecting someone to be complaining that I'm practicing too loud. And I'm opening the door, ready to apologize, and it's Lionel Hampton standing there. What the heck? I can't believe I'm talking to Lionel Hampton. I'm standing. So he walks right in and he says, "Hey man," he says, "Welcome to the band." And he came just basically to welcome me into his band. And we're standing in my hotel room talking, and I'm thinking, because I didn't say this, but I'm thinking, holy smokes, I can't believe I'm standing there talking to Lionel Hampton.
Yeah.
So I was really happy about that. That was probably the turning point in my career, which really started me thinking about I can do this.
What year round was that, you think? If you recall, 69. And how was it? Let's say day and the time you guys go to different cities or stuff. Would you all go together to a coffee shop? I mean, would you go out to the park or something? What those type of stories that we don't hear that much about.
Well, there's a closeness. There's no question about it. I mean,
right.
You're all riding in the same bus,
right.
and it becomes the family. That's your family.
Right.
You get to love each other like they're your brothers. And there's definitely a closeness. And sure, often we'd all go to a restaurant and have dinner together. But everything we do is together. You try.
Right.
You're rooming together. I was rooming with the bass player Eustace.
Right.
And so there's bonds that are formed. There's also, so it's all not perfect either. There's also situations where a couple of guys in the band might be a little bit, rebellious and maybe there's some friction between nothing overly bad, but you find the people that you're most compatible with, and but for the most part it's a big family, and as in big families, there are some people that you like more than others,
Right. And how was it when you got, do you recall like when you went to perform, anybody at the audience and said, you know, I really enjoy what you guys are doing. It was, you made my day. Did interaction with the fans, with the audience after the show and stuff like that?
All the time, all the time.
Right.
Especially with Ham's band, but with all the bands. Well, you know, I played with a lot of the great bands like Woody Herman's band, Lionel Hampton's band, and other great bands as well. Frank Foster's band, Tito Puente, so many. And it's always that way. There's always the jazz audience.
Right.
Is a great audience. I mean,
Right.
they really appreciate what's going on, and fortunately, those bands are always putting on a good show. They consistently live up to the expectations of the audience. So it's always fun interacting with the people afterwards, and sometimes the best parts of the gigs are the hangs afterwards, you know, and you get to interact with the people in the audience and other musicians, and sit down and have a drink and just shoot the breeze, you know. And yeah, it's always fun, and the reaction is always it's always good.
Give me one quick second. I take care of my mother. Just give me one quick second, but
Sure.
we're definitely having a great interview. Give me one quick second. Yeah. What is it, Mom?
What? Angie, why don't you come here for a second?
Okay, I'm back. I'm taking care of. Okay, I'm back.
Not live.
Yeah.
Is it really, Eric?
Yeah. I checked on my mother real quick, and I heated up some food and got some food for her, and then she asked me, "Well, why don't you come up and eat your food?" Well, I said, "I'm doing an interview right now." She's 78 years old.
Well, God bless her.
Yeah, you know, yeah, and my dad passed about 4 years ago. It kind of really rocked her world, but she's doing good. She's doing good.
You said,
Right, so let's interview you real quick for a quick second. Tell us about being a singer, and tell us about that. Why he's doing what he's doing.
well, yeah. I met Ron
Yeah.
on a big band gig, which was kind of neat. And
Right.
That's how we met, and it has been really an amazing ride. But I've been encouraging him he's always writing music and always putting me out there and trying to get my career going. He's a very, very giving person. And when we were doing all this, you know, all this craziness and you know, isolating and stuff, he was writing music, and he was so focused and so cheerful and hopeful about everything. And finally, it's you know, I guess around the holidays last year, I'm thinking, well, it'll be soon. I kept thinking by March or April of this year, we'd be past everything. But unfortunately, no. But I said to him, you know, I've been bugging you to write a book, because he's telling me all these great stories all the time. Why don't you start now? You've got to, you know, maybe 3 or 4 months. He wrote it in 1 month.
Wow, in 1 month?
I know, and the pandemic didn't end, and he's done with the book.
Wow.
But he's back. I'm going to send him right back. Nice to meet you.
Yeah, nice to meet you. Okay, thanks. She was, yeah, so yeah, I had to check on my mother. I had to heat some food up for her, and then she was like, "Well, come eat your food." I said, "Well, I'm interviewing right now." Yeah, so everything's okay. Yeah, so yeah, the question I would ask you is okay, so you're out performing and stuff like that. Yes, I want to ask you about Sarah. Did you meet Sarah Vaughan? Yeah, so you had a picture in the book with her, of her.
No, I wish I would have met Sarah Vaughan. She's one of my favorite singers, and actually my wife's favorite singer.
Oh, okay.
I never had the opportunity to meet her or play with her, and I wish I would have.
Right. So tell us about okay, now you came in as it was kind of winding down. And I guess I can see you as a musician back then, you were considered kind of like as the equivalent of a rock star. So that attracted and brought you and your wife together. I mean, she was fascinated by this musician, and you were very talented, and that helped, I guess.
Yeah, well, it's kind of maybe I was on a road with Skitch Henderson's band. I don't know if you know who Skitch Henderson is, but he was the band leader for the Johnny Carson show, for the Tonight Show.
Okay.
And after he left the Tonight Show, he
Yeah.
would tour with his band, and I got a call to do a tour with his band,
Right.
which I did. And when I got off that, I was rooming with another saxophone player named Steve Greenfield.
Okay.
And when we got back to New York, I got a call from a band leader on Long Island. He had a dance band, asked me to play this gig with him, and I took the gig.
Right.
And, reluctantly, I wasn't crazy about playing with this particular band, but for some reason I knew the guy was a decent guy, and I all right, I'll do the gig.
Right.
And there was a nostalgic kind of band. They were playing like Glenn Miller stuff and music from the 30s and 40s, and I really, that's not where I was going. But I took the gig because he was a friend.
Right.
And, we played a place called the Terrace on the Park here in Queens. It's right on the World's Fair, 60s World Fair site here. And in that band was Angela. She was the singer of the band. She was fresh out of college.
Okay.
She was the vocalist with the band. So that's how we met.
Okay,
and,
great.
It was kind of weird. We lived on Long Island. We dated for a while. We got married. And we lived on Long Island for decades. And right before the pandemic, we moved back into the city. I grew up in Astoria, so we moved back into Queens, and we're in Forest Hills now. Right. And we bought this co-op, and it's got a terrace, and it's got a beautiful, up on the 9th floor, and it's got this beautiful view. And I was asking the real estate broker right after we closed. We were walking through the unit, and I asked him what that building was that was so clear, right in the middle of these picture windows we have, and it's got a big T on it. And I said, "What's that?" He says, "Oh, that's Terrace on the Park." I couldn't believe it. That's the building. That's the place where we met.
Wow.
And years we full circle, and I could look as we're talking. I could look out my window, and I'm looking at the Terrace on the Park right now. So we knew, if nothing else, we knew we were in the right place right now. So it's kind of weird how that worked out. But that's how I met Angela. She was the singer of the band. She's already, since then we've produced 3 albums with her. We did an album. We talked about Lionel Hampton. We did an album called Swinging with Legends. It's my big band, and Lionel Hampton's on that album with her.
Right.
So we had him. We had Frank Foster, and we had Lou Tabak, another great legendary jazz tenor player, as guests with my big band.
Wow.
And the album's called Swing with Legends. Great album. And I think I produced a couple of dozen.
We'll put a link in it. We'll put a link. It's Christmas time, right? So we can put a link in the body of the video and encourage people to, get the book and get one of the albums for Christmas.
There you go.
There you go. So how many years were you married? How many years have you been married?
36 years.
36 years?
Yeah.
Okay, great. And you have what? You said 4 kids?
Well, no, we have 1 kid together, Angela and I.
Okay.
I had 4 children from my previous marriage.
Okay. So tell me what happened. You were coming in, and then you said the scene was changing. You said that it was kind of not as strong as it was when you first came in, if you would have came in 5 years earlier. So what was that period of life like? Did you have to make interesting or certain type of decisions in order to continue onward? And did you have to make adjustments? Tell us about, because people should hear that about, to understand that musicians have to be very, you have to be a very smart person. You have to think, and there's so many things, moving parts. in terms of being a musician?
Well, you know, I had a choice. If I wanted to stay in New York, I wanted to get off the road. I've been doing a lot of road work, and after a period of time, you know, and you're raising a family, you don't want to be on the road all the time.
Right.
I had to figure out a way to make a living with
Right.
with the studios being dismantled and the business being what it was. It wasn't an easy time.
Right.
I did a lot of lounge.
Right.
There were back in the 70s and the 80s. There were tons of lounges all over New York, and in Brooklyn there were still a lot of clubs that featured live music. So I would do a lot of those lounge. I hooked up with a lounge singer, and he kept me busy. We did all those Brooklyn rooms, and then we actually even did the Copa Lounge, Copa Cabana, for a couple of years. And then I taught. I had private students, and from time to time, when things got really weird, I'd even take a day gig, you know, to do what I had to do to you know, to keep the bread on the table, you know.
Right.
So you know, there's, you know, it wasn't all you know, roses, man. There were periods where things got weird, and you wonder, you know, is this, you know, is this what I really want to do? You know, the business can be tough. I did some Broadway work. You know, I did a show called Song of Singapore. I was doing subs on that show. I was doing subs for the circus. I was doing the lounges in Brooklyn and the Copa Lounge and other things. So I was kind of doing a little bit of a lot of things, you know, to stay off the road.
Right.
So that's basically how I got through it and kept my chops together, you know.
Tell us about becoming now, from making the transition from being just a musician, which is quite a feat in itself. I'll tell you this little story to kind of give you brief story there to kind of give people an idea, because a lot of times they underestimate people of the arts. Anthony Quinn, I saw an interview with him. I tell people about this story a lot, that he was this is near the end of his life. He was interviewed, and he was saying that over in England, for example, he would go there and they told him, by studying being an actor, that you are one of the most important individuals in society, because you're the one that's going to inspire the brick man to continue his work, or the man to become a doctor, or the other man to become the lawyer, that you are the person that motivates society and keeps it going. So I kind of look at that from the book author to the musician. Here, these are arts from the singer that you really motivate, and you never know. Somebody may be suicidal one night and they hear a show of yours. You know, your wife may sing. Or somebody may read this book that you have, and it inspires something, you know, to keep going. Everything's going to be all right. So I really value people of the arts a lot. So, you know, thank you for, you know, your years in the arts. So let me just go here. What made you? So I didn't want, because I said just a musician. I want to let people know a musician is quite an important figure in world society. So when did you make the transition, and how was that to add to your title, music producer?
You know what? Your sound was just breaking up over
Okay.
here. Okay.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah. Now
Yeah. When did you make the addition, and how was it to become the music producer? Not just as a performer or instrumentalist, but also to become a music producer, creating music recorded.
Well, again, the entire industry started changing.
Right.
There was a period where you can do a demo and bring it and shop it around to record labels, and if they liked it, they would bring you in and produce your album for, you know, and on their label. Um, but we all know what's going on with the record business right now. It's just as bad as everything else in the music business. They're you know, they're not selling even CDs anymore.
Right.
So it's a tough business. But I guess my first production was back in the 80s.
Okay.
I decided to, and it happened this way. NOLA Studios is a kind of a world famous studio on 57th Street in Manhattan. And it's owned by a buddy of mine who used to play piano in my band. He passed a few years ago. His name is Jimmy Zach. And Jimmy would call me from time to time, and he liked the way I played, and he wanted to produce an album with me. He said, I have the studio, you have the band and musicians. He says, we can do this, you know. So that's how I got started producing. He gave me complete freedom to write anything I want to you know, over who I wanted to be in the band and all that. And he supplied the studio and left the music entirely up to me.
Right.
So that's how I got into producing. It was a unique situation where I could record in the top, but studio time is the big nut when you're producing records. I mean, you know, you need a budget to pay for studio time. It can really get expensive. So without that expense, it enabled me to produce an album, and I liked it. I really enjoyed the creativity and putting things together. But he had called me dozens of times, and I always turned them down because I never felt like I had anything worthy of recording. But the very last time that he called me, I had been working regularly with my band at a club in Brooklyn called Brown's, and the band was tight, and we had doing a lot of playing together, and I had a lot of new music. I had some original music, and I thought the timing is right now. So when he called, I said, okay, let's do it. That's how I got started producing. And after that, I formed my own. Later in years, I put my own production company together. I had my own recording studio. I built my own studio, and it was a state-of-the-art studio with all digital stuff, and I was getting a really good sound in the studio. And I built it mainly for my productions, but I also produced other artists that I thought should be recorded in it. And I don't have that studio anymore because I sold the house, but for about a decade I was producing a lot of artists and my own stuff, and I did two of my own albums there, and one of Angela's albums were recorded in that studio. But that's how I got started. I got started with Jimmy Zach with all the studios.
Wow. Okay, so here we are. Tell us, and I guess we've had quite an interview. So tell us about what was going on prior to COVID? What was kind of going on the music scene, and what were the things you're doing for being a jazz musician, producer, all the titles that you hold?
All right. Well, I'm not producing anymore with my own studio, although I do want to produce at least one more album. I wrote a lot of music during this pandemic. I have about 30 brand new arrangements that I haven't even heard yet.
Right.
A lot of them are vocals. Most of them are vocals that I want Angela to do another album, and I would even like to do another instrumental album. But what I was doing before the pandemic, I was busy. We had been working for about a 9-year period. There's a club in Jersey called Trumpets.
Okay.
And Angela and I had been working. It became our home. We became good friends with the owners, and we loved working the room. And after working there for a few years with our small band, they asked us to bring the big band in, and we would do like one Sunday a month with the big band for about 6 years. And I always loved working with the big band, and I started writing some new music, and the band started really sounding amazing because we were working so much. And I brought the band into Birdland, which is
Mhm.
probably my favorite nightclub on the planet.
Yeah.
We did 4 shows at Birdland, and we were also we got friends. We got to be friends with a TV host on a cable station. It's
Mhm.
called and uh, and a gal named Ginger Broderick. She had a show called Ginger New York.
Right.
And when I released my tribute to Blakey album, she had me on her show,
Right.
and I brought a rhythm section up with me on the TV show, piano, bass, and drums, and we played a. I knew she was a Beatles fan, so I arranged a couple of Lennon's songs,
Wow.
and we played them on her show, and um, and Ginger. This was before the interview, and I walk over to do the interview, and I see tears rolling down the side of her face. She got so emotional listening to the Beatles music.
Right.
So I'm thinking, gee whiz, if if this is how people respond to Beatles music, maybe I should do a tribute to John Lennon. I had done an album with John Lennon in 1974.
Oh, you did an album with, you said, rewind. You did an album with John Lennon.
Yeah,
Oh
yeah.
my, you don't be bashful. Tell us the different people that you did. Okay, John Lennon. I mean, come on. Tell us some more. Give us some more names. This is amazing.
Well, John Lennon did an album called Walls and Bridges in
Right.
1974. I'm on that album. He had a horn section that he called the Little Big Horns, and
Right.
it was one of those Little Big Horns.
Wow.
And I actually, there's so much, there's a whole chapter in the book, and I'm not going to
Right.
give the whole thing away now. People want to know the whole story; they're going to have to buy the book.
Hey, that's how you cliffhang him. Hang him. That is really good. But so you did some. Did you ever produce him? Or you did. Are you
Produced an album, a tribute to John Lennon. Yeah, that was
okay?
that was one of the albums I did in my studio. That's one of the productions I was telling you about.
Okay.
And after all these years, but what inspired me to do that album was to see Ginger's reaction to it.
Right.
And I'm thinking, maybe now's a good time to do that tribute. So I did. And because of that, Angela and I became good friends with Ginger, who was the host of the show.
Right.
And we did a few more shows following that. And then Ginger wanted to get into producing. So she asked Angela and I if we would co-host the show for her and then let her produce the show, which we did. And we did
Awesome.
4 or 5 shows. So we became TV hosts,
Wow. Wow.
We
Now,
got-
how did y'all meet? She came to one of your performances, the TV person?
Yeah, she did. I was invited to the BB Kings in New York to do
Oh
this,
yeah.
to do this Beatle tribute kind of a concert. It was called Bangladesh, Back to Bangladesh.
Right.
And they invited me to play one of the cuts from Lennon's Walls and Bridges album.
Right.
And I met Ginger there. She was, again, a big Beatles fan, and she came backstage, introduced herself to me, and gave me a card.
Right.
So right after I did my Blakey tribute, I called Ginger, and we spoke. I sent her a copy of the album, and I said, she says something like, "So when are you going to be on my show?" And so when are you going to ask me? So we set up a date, and that's how my friendship with Ginger started, and that led to a whole bunch of other TV. And the thing that we loved about it's live TV.
Right. Right.
It's live TV anymore these days. Everything's taped, but
Right.
in front of the cameras, man, and it's all going out live. There's an excitement about all of that we really liked, So, but that's what you asked me what we were doing before the pandemic. We were co-hosting the TV show. We were playing at Birdland, and I was writing a lot of music and doing a lot of work with both my big band and my small band. So we were on a roll. We were doing really well when this pandemic hit. So we're hoping that things simmer down, and they look to be. The numbers are going in the right direction now, and hopefully, not too long from now, everybody be out there, playing their instruments again, and not being afraid of this dreaded virus.
That's true. That's true. Now, just a few more questions. This is, I mean, I'm getting a chance to talk to a great, and so I'm excited. I'm very excited about this. Now, tell us about what was going on. I think your wife talked a little bit about it, but and that was cool that we got a chance to interview her a little bit. That was it worked out beautifully. So tell us, she always will be a part of this video. So tell us about what was going on during the pandemic. We do know that you wrote the book, so tell us how did that affect you, your family, and what has the experience of the pandemic been like?
Well, I kept busy. Before I wrote the book, I decided to catch up on all the music that I've been wanting to write.
Right.
It was a period where it really lent to going back and doing stuff that you've been wanting to do and didn't have time for.
Right.
So that's what I did. I kept myself busy writing big band arrangements, stuff that I've been wanting to do and didn't have the time to do. So I found out that it was pretty scary. We were in a really bad spot here in Queens. In fact, I guess it was April of 2020,
right,
where Queens, right where we were living, we were not on the whole damn planet. I mean, it was really. It was really bad. I mean, sirens, ambulances all day and all night. And a guy on my floor, a couple of doors down, had COVID. And
wow.
Those between our door and the elevator. I couldn't get out of my house. I didn't want to walk past this guy's door.
Absolutely.
So we were quarantined solidly. I mean, didn't get out of our apartment for a couple of months.
Wow.
Yeah, so it was bad. So being quarantined, I'm not gonna sulk or feel sorry for myself. I sat down, I started writing some music, and
wow.
And fortunately, my wife is a voiceover artist, and she has clients all over the planet. She goes into her little studio here, and so she's busy doing voiceovers. I'm busy writing arrangements. Didn't keep us from going crazy, but it helped,
Yeah. So did you? I guess you hired someone to bring the food, or you hired a service to do the shopping or whatever, bring the food to you during that time period?
Absolutely. We happen to be in a part of Queens or part of New York where they deliver everything. I mean, everything.
Okay.
Very service-oriented place around here, and we had food delivered. We also had our groceries delivered, and they would leave the groceries in the hall. We were actually afraid of groceries being contaminated with the virus, and we let it sit in the hall for a few hours, and then Angela would go out and disinfect everything piece by piece, and it was just really weird, man. It's like a really bad dream. I wrote in one of the spots in my book. I said at that time I had written about 25 arrangements, and
wow.
And I said I'd gladly give back those 25 arrangements and the book if this were just a bad dream.
Right.
I traded for this COVID never happened.
Hey, that sounds like here we go, because I'm a songwriter, so I'm doing some songwriting for a pop group, and then maybe Macy Gray. But anyway, you said it was a bad. What did you say? A bad dream? Hopefully, it was a bad dream.
Yeah, I would give it all back if it was just a dream. Bad dream.
Something caught me about a bad dream as some type of titles. It was if it was just a bad dream, as a title.
There you go. We're on the same frequency.
Okay, that's you right. That came from you. So you the that's yours. That's you right there. So pretty much closing, because it was such an interesting, and people have to go read the book. They have to go. They met you. They met your wife, they have to go get the book. So what do you expect? And let me just add this real quick. People, you see someone that's 81 years old, that's as vibrant. Actually, the 80s to new 40s, it has to be so vibrant and so young, and the wife and everybody's so vibrant. So tell me, what do you look for on the other side of the virus? What would be, what's the outlook for the future?
Okay, the outlook for the future is get my band back together.
Right.
And start listening to all this music I've been writing, and then go from there and try to figure out how we can get some budget together to get back into the studio and put a Legends 2 album together for Angela. Something similar to what we did with Hampton, Frank Foster. You know, there are many wonderful, legendary musicians that deserve to be on an album like we're going to be producing. So it's going to be kind of a similar situation. A Legend, Swinging with Legends 2, and it'll be my big band, and it'll be 3 or 4 legendary. We're thinking about maybe even bringing in some of the vocalists, some of the legendary vocalists that are still out there making music. You know, I ain't gonna mention names, but we have a pretty good plan on what we want to do, and as soon as it's safe enough to do it, we'll be out there working on it.
Who knows? I might pop up to Bird with I have a friend up there that's the nephew of the Beach Boys. We do music sometime together. Who knows? He lives up there. I used to live up there, so we might pop up at Birdland and really hear some real music. You know what I mean? Some from you. So yeah. So you it would be wrong of me not to what do you have to say to anybody of any age about writing a book? Because the word is out. You did it in a month. I won't tell you who. Somebody told me a secret, but I won't tell you who told me. But you did it in quite in a quick time. I mean, you poured your heart out. But what do you have to say to people about, go out there, if you have something to say, you have something to write, be a book author, go for it. What do you have to say? You're the role model here.
Well, you just said it. You said if you got something, just get out and do it. You know, it's funny, but since I wrote this book, I'm getting a lot of that from other artists, and they say, "Gee, I've been wanting to write a book." I said, "Just do it. Just sit down and do it." And I know Angela says it took me a month, but it did, in actual typing time. But
Right.
don't think that I hadn't been thinking about all these stories for a lot of years, and other people ask me, how do you remember all that stuff? And I don't know, but I think what happens is, and this I'm sure it's going to happen to anybody that tries to write a book. Once you start writing, and once you open that back door, and all that stuff, that subconscious opens up. One story leads to another, and the stuff comes flying out. And you can't even type it as fast enough. You know, that's what happens. You do it, you know, so don't be afraid to get started, because it's all about getting started. And once you get started, it picks up a head of steam on its own, you know, and you can't write. I'd wake up in the morning and say, "Oh man, another great story." And I'd run over to the computer and start plugging it in, and you know, you get that flow, and we all have that. And I think what you have to do is just do it. Don't be afraid of it, man. Just jump in and do it. Start writing, and even the first few paragraphs might feel weird, but they get better and they get more interesting as you go.
Awesome. And let me get this. We had to get this out. This is such a monumental, I mean, a huge interview. What do you have to say to the young people of today? And we definitely are looking that that want to get in music, write a book or whatever. What do you have to say to the young people in America and across the world?
Well, I already gave my advice about the book, so we'll put that one aside. As far as the music, you know, I'm almost afraid to give any advice during this period, because I don't know what it's going to be like. How far will this all come back? Well, all these clubs that we were playing in, will they all open up again? We don't know that. In fact, some of them we know are not coming back. So this is a weird historic period we're going through. I mean, biblical proportions, man. This is crazy. So to advise people during this period would be really hard for me. I'd be afraid to advise, except that do what your heart tells you to do.
Yeah.
You know, nobody knows what's going to happen down the road. You know, and
Right.
at this point, so do it. Do what your heart tells you to do, and keep some logic happening at the same time. You know, so that would be my advice. This is a bad period for giving advice when I don't know myself what the hell I'm going to be doing. You know.
Well, I have to do this, and then I guess we will close out. I'm just enjoying this. I'm soaking this in. So, and I'm sure the audience as well. What is the key to making it to 81 and I mean to 80 and up, and staying young and staying on top of things? I mean, to write so much music during the pandemic, to write a book in virtually 30 days or whatever, 31 days. What is the key to keeping that youthfulness and keeping that power and that ability that if you want to do something, you do it?
Well, I think it's a two-part deal. I mean, physically, you gotta get your physical thing happening. You gotta stay in shape. You don't. Most people don't make it to 100 that are like 300 pounds. You know, most people are that make it all the way are people that are physically in decent shape. So I try to keep in shape. I walk every day. I have a treadmill in my bedroom. I used to go to the gym, but now with the pandemic, we bought a treadmill. So I do like 3-4 miles every day on my treadmill.
Wow.
And I try to eat right. I'm into herbs and vitamins, and I try to keep the nutrition thing happening. And then the other part is this part up here,
Mm-hmm.
And I think the music for me takes care of that part, So it's that mix, but that's what seems to be working for me. And I think it's probably a good start for anybody who's looking to getting into that senior group and still feeling like they're taking care of business. I got to tell you, and I'm probably not the average person, but I feel like I'm just getting started sometimes.
Oh, goodness.
Stuff I want to do.
Right.
And that's the part that's up here. I have a lot of dreams that I have to fulfill yet, man. And that's the thing that works for me. So. Can you teach this? I don't know. I can throw it out there, and hopefully, people will take my advice and keep themselves in good shape physically, and keep your dreams alive.
Absolutely. So where can we purchase the book, and where can we follow you? Facebook or wherever? Yeah. There it is.
Just happen to have one here.
Yeah. Where can we buy the book at?
Exclusively on my site. They're not on Amazon yet. We're going to have an ebook coming out pretty soon.
Okay.
But the hard copies can be bought on right through my website, and I personalize every one that's bought. By the way,
Okay.
And my website is www.ronaprea.com.
Right. We're going to put that in the body of the video. And I guess you'll be performing in the future at Birdland, and so I guess if we're in the city, come see a master do his work.
Yeah, well, hopefully soon. Man.
Yeah. So thing I want to say is been a very informative, and we really learned about jazz. We definitely need to go pick the book up, and I guess in the link you'll also, we want to, you probably, so there's a lot of people that love the would probably be interested in the tribute to John Lennon. So if you want to put some, we'll put some links in there that they can get that album. It's Christmas time. It's a great time to buy some good, to buy the book, to buy some of the material. And then maybe in the future, we'll get a chance, some of us, especially those that are in Birdland, I know a lot of friends, go over and see the performances when they start back up again. And so at this time, thank you for coming out. Really, it was an education. It was entertaining. It was an education. It was great. Really appreciate you coming to today and interviewing, getting a chance to be interviewed.
Thanks for having me, man. I enjoyed talking with you. So hopefully we'll see you up at one of the clubs in New York soon. Yeah.
So everybody, we're going to end it. You just stay 1 second, but we're going to end it for you guys, the audience, and go get the book, look and go get some of the music, and we'll put a link in the body of the video, and support somebody that's great here and that gave us some time and told us about longevity of life, what we need to do. So we have really got a full education, and we have been blessed. So until next time, we'll see you again on American Authors and Others. And this was a great show. We'll see you next time. You can say goodbye to them too. Goodbye. All right. It was beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. See you next time, everybody.